Thanks. Thanks for the introduction. I'll start off a little bit about myself and tell you about my company, and then I figured a good topic today would be the 10 things that I've learned as an entrepreneur. I thought, why not share my lessons that I've struggled with over the last 10, 15 years. So a little bit about myself. My name is Justin Grossman. I actually went to ASU Honors Business College, at Bartlett College, and graduated almost 17 years ago with a management degree. I've got two companies that I've started. So one is Melt Media, which is a web design, web development company. So we do digital marketing campaigns and build websites and do digital campaigns for people. That company was started 15 years ago. We've been on the Inc. 5000 list 5 times, and we're one of the largest digital marketing companies here in Phoenix. We've got about 65 employees, and we're continuing to grow. We'll probably get another 5 or 6 here by the end of the year, so we'll be close to 70 by the end of the year. I also started another company, a software as a service company that's called Telu, and we launched a beta version of that product in January of this year. And Telu is basically it creates reports for your marketing data. So we hook in with Google Analytics, Twitter, Facebook, and we create story-based reports for marketing and business professionals that want to learn about how their digital marketing campaigns are doing. So it was a spin out from Melt Media because we had a lot of customers that are coming to us saying, hey, we're building websites, we're doing campaigns, we want to know how our stuff is doing. And we said, all right, we can automate this, we can put this, make this a service, and we can and scale it. So we launched that in January of this year. We've been in beta. We're just transitioning out of beta. We got 1,200 users that have tried it and got a lot of great feedback. And now we're transitioning from beta to our paid model literally over the next month here, and incorporating a lot of the feedback. So that gives you a high-level background of myself. I'm going to kind of walk through kind of these top 10 lessons. If you guys have questions, stop me. I'm happy to answer midstream. I won't go for more about 20 minutes, so I'll save time for Q&A at the end. So however you guys feel comfortable, I'd rather kind of talk and share as I go, but whatever works for you guys. So the first lesson I've learned, and kind of where you guys are is don't be afraid to start. And we all have different reasons why we wouldn't want to start a company, but the best way to learn is to just go out and do it. So with my first company, Melt Media, one of my biggest concerns was financial. I had a good job, and I was really concerned about going and trying to make sure that I could generate enough revenue to pay myself. And so my concern wasn't whether I thought I would know how to build the company or whether I thought I could do the job. It was more from the standpoint of I was afraid about money. So we all have different reasons and different fears that keep us from starting companies. Some of us overanalyze things. Some of us, don't ever want to stop writing our business plan. But the one thing that I learned is that you just need to go out and start, because if you don't start, you're not going to learn, and you're not going to figure out what's the next thing that you need to learn, the next person you need to contact. You're not going to figure out if your business idea is any good. You're not going to ever get any feedback. The second company that I started, Telu, same thing. I was afraid to start it because I didn't know how I could run 2 companies at once. So I told myself that I couldn't ever do that, and so I stopped. So I kept from doing it. But the only way that I could actually figure it out was to actually start it. So we ended up taking a team, pulling a team from our core company, sitting them in the corner, and said, "You're no longer part of the core company. You're going to now just work on this other product." And we just started, and we've been learning ever since. So rule number 1, just go ahead and start. And I think a key thing for you guys, because of, from a college perspective, is you don't have to start. There's a lot of ways to start these days. You don't have to go build this enormous company. You can just go out and validate your idea. You guys are probably doing some of this stuff, but you guys have Kickstarter out there. You guys can do surveys. You can do all kinds of things to just actually learn about if there's a market there, and then what the market might be interested in. So you can go interview people. There's all kinds of ways that you guys can get started. That's really low cost, And you don't have to start scaling this big thing or worry about going and raising funds or something. So the next one is solve a problem that you're passionate about. So I've tried to start a couple other businesses that I got going in some real estate stuff, I got going in some other things, but I wasn't really passionate about it. And so if you're going to try to overcome challenges and try to learn about stuff, you got to be passionate about it. You want to be able to get up every day and figure that you're going to solve some problems for somebody. And anything that you're building that I've learned, it takes multiple years. So I've been building Melt Media for over 12 years. We've been a year and a half into this other company. I know when I start something that I'm going to be putting in 5, 10, 15 years commitment. That doesn't mean that it might not last 6 months or a year or 5 years, or there might be some other thing that happens. But you're making a commitment to build something, so you need to build something that you're passionate about, where you're not necessarily going to go ahead and get up every day and say, hey, I want to do this. And you're also going to be scared to overcome some of the biggest challenges. If you feel like there's no way to move forward and you're not passionate about something, it's really easy to give up. So the next one is swim in the other direction. And so I learned that being counterintuitive and going in the other direction of what you've learned is sometimes the best way to go. So I'll give you an example for my company, Melt Media. When we started it, one of the things that people were doing was, in our work, when you're building websites and things like that, people were charging by the hour. They said, all right, I think it's going to cost us 100 hours, so we're going to charge you 100 hours. And that's the way the whole marketplace worked. Well, when we started Melt Media, we said, all right, we're going to swim the other direction. People hate that model. They hate not knowing how many hours it's going to be and that this website project can go out of control. So we said, look, we're going to give you a flat fee, $10,000 or $20,000 or $15,000, and we're going to take the risk. If we can't make it work for that, it's on us. And so that was going against the marketplace, and people resonated with that. They said, wow, you guys are going to take that risk? You guys are going to do that? And we said, yeah, we owe it to you. We're the experts. We need to come up and figure out how to make that happen. And that doesn't mean we built whatever they wanted. We had a contract of what was right. But that was swimming in the other direction. That was doing something that was counterintuitive to what the market's doing. So look for opportunities in places that you wouldn't necessarily think, and swim the other direction. Another example is I have a friend who has a painting business, and he always tells me, well, painting is a commodity, right? Everybody can paint a house, and it should cost about the same. So how can you differentiate that? Well, he differentiated his product by the way that he does his sales cycle. So he came up with a process where he actually is, you call him up, and he doesn't have to go out and give you a quote in your house or set up time with you. He just asks you how many square feet, what kind of colors that you have, and then he can give you a quote and a bid right there immediately. So think of different ways that you can swim against the market. This one, grow responsibly. So growing a company is important, but growing it responsibly is even more important. There's multiple things that will make the wheels come off the bus. And when we were growing really fast, we were growing about 50% a year. And we didn't have everything in place to take on all the amount of people that we needed to take on. We didn't have an easy way to train people, and we didn't have a management team that was experienced enough to onboard and put the right structure in place. So we started to feel that pressure. The wheels on the bus were spinning, and they were starting to steam and get hot. And that creates a lot of frustration within the companies that you're building, because we're all people, and we want to be in a good environment, and we don't want to be stressed all the time. We want to be able to go out and do good work, right? So growing responsibly could mean a couple different things. It might mean don't grow quicker than the amount of money that's coming in the door. Don't grow quicker than the amount of people that you can get in the door. Try to find that right balance of growth and learning so that you can move forward. Because if the wheels come off the bus, it's a frustrating experience. So this is a real important thing that I had to learn, which is build a team and hire people better than yourself. When you're starting a company, you feel like the weight of the world is on you sometimes, and you're like, I need to have an answer to every single question. I need to be able to provide for everybody that's working for me in my company. Every single customer that asks me a question, I should have the answer. But at the end of the day, you're not going to have all the answers. You're not the best person in the room, and you don't want to be, because the only way to build a real company is to put together a team of people that are better than yourselves. So I've got my strengths, but I surrounded myself with people that have other strengths and people that help offset my weaknesses. And so the only way that I've learned to let a company excel is to go out and find people, partners, employees, whatever it is, right? There's multiple ways to mentors, but it's there to find a way that you can be around people that are better than yourself so that you can learn and grow. So listening to the market. So we all have this vision or idea that we're passionate about, and we go out and we say, all right, we're going to build it, and all of a sudden, customers are just going to flood to it. And why there are a couple examples that you build this cool, great product and everybody goes, wow, that's awesome, and it just takes off. That's not what most people experience. It's a constant evolving process of listening to the market. So it's doing just enough to get your product to market and also learning about the channel distribution, right? Who's going to buy it? Who you're selling it to? Those two need to be something that you kind of work in tandem with all the time. So as you start an idea, then you want to get feedback from the market and say, is this something that's going to work for me? So as we launched our last product, we went into a private beta, and we gave it out to basically friends and family, people in our network, customers we already had. Some of them were right for the product, some of them weren't, but we just wanted to say, does this even feel right? And we cleaned up a bunch of stuff. Then we went out and we said, all right, now we need people that we don't know to come in here and give us kind of raw feedback. And so then we went out and we set up some marketing campaigns to get some people into our software that would allow us to get new feedback. And so the initial feedback was really good, but we learned a bunch of stuff that we didn't assume was true. And so now we're starting to build that into our product. So it's this balancing of listening to the market and working on developing your product, and not thinking that your vision is the perfect vision. Your vision is what starts. It's the evolution of your vision and listening to your customers in your market that starts to get you traction. So this is where a lot of entrepreneurs start saying, no, I don't need to do this, but learning your numbers. Some of the entrepreneurs that I'm around are really good at numbers. They like math, they like accounting, they like finance. But most of the people that I'm around don't like accounting, don't like math, don't like the numbers. They don't want to get into it in their business. This is super important. If you guys don't understand your profit and loss statements, your balance sheets, your statement of cash flows, break-even analysis, you don't have to do it all on your own. You don't have to put it together yourself, but you should understand what's being presented to you. So if you go out and get help from somebody that's an accountant or somebody that's really good at putting this stuff together, you need to understand inside and out what that means and what it means to your business, because the worst feeling that I've ever had is when I'm strapped for money and I feel like, I've got too many employees to pay, or we're going to run into a cash crunch. Those are scenarios that you guys don't want to be in because they add a lot of stress. So learning about how you generate revenue, what your expenses are, when you can break even, that's going to make your guys' life a lot more easier. And then if you're going out and talking to people, to get employees, management team, investors, whatever you may be doing, they're going to ask you some very critical questions around all this stuff. And if you don't have good answers, you're not going to get traction there. So deal with tough things early and often. And this can mean a bunch of things, but what I've seen over the year is we hate to deal with tough stuff. We hate to, if we have an employee that's not doing what they need to do, we don't want to let them go. If we have a business partner that we're not enjoying working with anymore, we don't want to tell them. If we've got a customer that's just not working for us anymore, we can't make any money off them, or they're just causing a lot of problems, we have trouble telling them no. Right? Those are just natural tendencies for any person to not want to have conflict. But one of the things I've learned that's really important is to address these things early and often. If you leave an employee in your company for too long, it'll snowball, and you're basically, it'll infect everybody, right? So if you have one person in your company that's the negative person, then you're going to have two people that become negative. And you're going to have a third person becomes negative, because that person's going to go to the other person and they're going to say, look, don't you see this? Don't you see what's happening here? Wouldn't you we really need to get together. Will you join me? Will you be on my side? Will you help me with this stuff, right? And boom, now you've got this whole other thing that's going on. Same thing with customers. So really, I've never seen a problem suppress itself. It always comes back, and it comes back worse. Sometimes you think that you solved it a little bit, but it's not. It's just sitting there. It's hiding under the surface. So I think we've probably all read that, as startups and entrepreneurs, that failure is awesome, right? Because if you fail, you've tried and you've learned something new. And I agree with that to an extent. But if you fail and you fall on your face, it really hurts. And it can really knock the wind out of your sails, right? You feel, all your motivation's taken away from you. You feel like this baby that you've been building or whatever you're doing, you take that stuff personally. So when you look at failure, you want to look at one of the most important things is saying, all right, how can I make sure that I still don't fall on my face? Because you want to be able to get back up, and you want to be able to try again. And so one of the most important things from an entrepreneur is risk management. So I see two types of entrepreneurs out there at the extremes. You have entrepreneurs all the way to the right side that are like, they'll try anything, we'll try this, and you're jealous of them. You're going, wow, this person has this idea, and they're going to go make it happen, and they're going to do it, and you get motivated by that person. But then 2 months later, you talk to that person, you're like, oh, that didn't work, and and then they do it again, and you get excited for them again, and then they crash again. And if you watch, it's this wave over and over and over again of these ups and downs and ups and downs. And then you've got this other person on the other side who's totally risk averse. Well, I just fixed my business plan, and I'm making some tweaks to it, and I think I'm going to start next week, and I'm going to get going next week. And you see him in a week or two, and you say, hey, how did it go? Well, I'm making a couple more tweaks, and right, so totally risk averse, doesn't want to start. Overanalyzing everything. The place to be is somewhere in the middle, taking enough risks, but managing them so you don't fall flat on your face, and not being so over-analytical that you never start, so that you can start learning. So delegation, this is a tough one for me. This is something that took me a long time to learn. So if you're going to hire a bunch of people and you're going to grow a company, you've got to let go of things. You've got to give tasks to other people. And if you're going to join with other people as partners, or if you guys are working on something together, you've got to have trust in the other people that you're working with that they're going to go do those things. But in order to have delegation work and to trust, there's got to be some simple rules. You've got to have some expectations, right? You've got to know what each other is doing. You need to know that you don't have to go manage that person. You need to make sure that that person is the same cultural fit as you, right? If they're going down it in a different philosophy or a different manner that you're doing it, you're not going to be happy. The results are not going to be aligned with your core values, right? So when you look to delegate to other people, you have to sit down and you have to say, all right, well, how do I become aligned? How do I work with somebody that's going to wow me, right? Somebody that I don't have to worry about, somebody I don't have to manage, and that's somebody that's aligned to my values. If you start getting those things right, then delegation becomes much easier and you can let things go. And personally, I had trouble letting things go. I felt like I had to answer every question, that I had to be there for every employee. And it was overwhelming. It actually was super frustrating, and it was exhausting and tiring. And as the company kept growing and growing, that list of decisions and questions got bigger and bigger for me. And finally, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I started telling everybody else to make decisions and then telling me how they're going and coaching them. And that was a transformation for me, because now everybody else was free to do what they needed to do, and I was able to check in with them by coaching them, talking about them, and getting updates from them. And this is kind of the bonus one. I said I had 10, but this is 11, because this is, I believe, the most important one. So I'm part of another entrepreneur group. It's called a EO Accelerator, and it's for companies between $250,000 revenue and $1 million. And I mentor 6 or 7 companies a year, and I've worked with about 50 companies now over the last 4 or 5 years. And the people that are in that stage, in the 250,000 to $1 million mark, the key thing that I see, that the people that stay at the 250 or at the 300,000 mark, and the people that get to the $1 million mark, the key thing that I see that's different about those people is they're willing to listen and learn, because they know they don't have all the answers, but they know how to start asking the right questions. They go to the market and ask the right questions. They go to the employees and ask the right questions. They go to their mentor and ask the right questions. They go and do research. They know that they don't know it all, and they start developing the critical reasoning skills that will help them make the decisions, because there's a decision every single day that's going to come your way, and if you don't know how to listen, ask the right questions, and work through it, you'll just find yourself repeating the same mistakes over and over and over. And so all the entrepreneurs that I worked with that start mastering this skill, they're the ones that start learning and growing, and you start seeing them accelerate. So to me, this was the most important lesson, because all the lessons before that, if you don't have these skills, you'll never be able to master those. So that's my 10 lessons learned. I'm happy to answer a bunch of questions. I wanted to make sure that I didn't just talk in front of you guys for an hour. So ask away. I'm happy to answer anything that you guys have. And yeah.
In the beginning, you mentioned a Kickstarter. Was that just an analogy, or is that something that's actually?
Yes. So I mentioned Kickstarter as so I think the one I was talking about is just go start your business, right? Start getting out there and start learning. And so today, I think it's easier to start a business than any time before. And starting a business doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go get everything working, right? So there's things, if you look at Kickstarter and other ways, you can go and put a concept together. You can put a product together, and you can ask people whether they buy it or not. And you can pre-fund the development of that product through platforms like that. And so you can go test an idea. If a bunch of people sign up for your product, then you know you've got demand. And if you meet your goals, then you have funding. So there's all these different ways that you can get started. You might just have an idea, but you don't know what to do with it. You can go out and put a survey together and go out and ask, go interview a couple people in the market. So you said, I think earlier you said you were working with CPAs and business owners. So you could go to 10 business owners and ask them the questions. If I provided a service like this, and I did this, and I did that, would that be good for you? Or you could go out on Facebook and do a segment of small business owners and drive them to take a survey, and spend $100, $50, whatever, to do the marketing ads for that and get those surveys taken. Now you got some ideas of whether this business is going to work or not. So there's all kinds of ways that you can start your business without having this huge funding barrier to get started, right? And the key is you want traction. You want the first step. Is your business something somebody else is going to want? Is there even one customer out there that's interested in it? Yes? Great. Are there more customers that are interested in it? Yes. Okay. How much is it going to cost for me to build or service that customer? Okay, right? Each step of the way, you're learning and you're doing. Yeah.
started, did you have how much like web development experience did you program? How much did you understand of that, and how was that first sort of building of the team, the first kind of people that came in?
Yeah. So I did program, but I was horrible. You don't want me programming anything for you ever. But I did have technical background out of school. I worked for Accenture, and so I learned technical background, and then I moved. It was starting of the internet bubble. I moved from Accenture, and I joined another software startup that was doing e-commerce. And so I learned the web very early on. So it was easy for me to move into that. And I had two business partners. One is very technical. So I had somebody on the technical side, and one person is very design-oriented, user experience-oriented. So, and then I was very business-oriented. So I had other partners that would help me to be able to build that. But I think having I don't think you have to have knowledge in the specific area you want to go in. I think you need to be passionate about it, which is what I said earlier. It does help to have knowledge to get it off the ground, right? I mean, if I'm going to go sell web design services to you, and I've told you I've never built a website, it might be a hard sell. But that doesn't mean you can't go get two other people that know how to do it, bring them to your team, right? We talked about bringing on people that are better than you, and then what role do you play, right? Maybe you're the network guy, maybe you're the sales guy, maybe you're, who knows, right? Maybe you're the numbers guy, you know?
Figuring out what your strengths are.
Yep. So, yeah. Yeah.
Do you follow lean startup launch or some other process? What would you recommend for a process for starting?
Yeah, so I've studied a bunch of that stuff. There wasn't any of that when I started my business, so I think those are a lot of cool tools. The way I look at all that stuff is it's knowledge and learning, right? And you can decide what of those things do you want to apply to your business and what of those things you don't. I think all those are great reads. I subscribe, like when we started our software startup, we kind of worked on doing an MVP, which is the lean startup method, and then iterating from that. When I look at my other business for website and development, I can't sell lean projects to large companies. They want a specific budget and a specific amount, and they need to sign off on that. So I can't use that kind of methodology. So you've got to understand what methodologies are out there and how to apply them. The thing that I've learned that I'm doing a lot more of lately is iterating and testing a lot, from product stuff to marketing stuff, sales stuff. Iterate, test, and learn, and go on from there. That's the most important. I think there's a bunch of frameworks out there that can help you guys do that. And measuring success one way or the other, having some type of metric, right? How do you know if you got somewhere? Like, how do you know if you're getting traction? Like, what's the next most important thing? 1 customer, 5 customers, 10 customers? And then you hit that, you can say, great, check that off. If you don't have some goals in mind, I want to build $1 million company. Wow, that's a big lift, right? I want to get 2 customers. Whoa, that's achievable. And you feel good about it. And then once you get 2 customers, I want to get 4. Awesome. Yeah.
So how many employees did you have when you had to really start delegating and acting more as the leaders of the company?
Yeah. Good question. So the company went through multiple different iterations. And I think if there was something that I would have learned early on, I would have delegated sooner. The time that we started to really feel like work had to be distributed elsewhere was around anywhere between 8 to 12 employees. That was where we first started it. But as an owner, I could still keep up with all 8 and 12 employees, right? It's not hard to go to lunch with all 8 to 12 employees every day and ask them questions. It starts to get really hard when you get to 20 22 employees, you can't keep up with everybody. You don't know what everybody's doing. So if you don't have the processes or some type of check-ins in place, today I don't believe in like we don't have a very big hierarchical management structure over at Melt Media, but we do have people that own different things, right? This person's in charge of hiring. This person's in charge of this. We also have people that check in with other people. So, employees want to be talked to on a daily, weekly basis. They want to know like what's going on. They want feedback. They want to we all want feedback, right? I want to know I'm doing a good job. Everybody wants to know if there's a problem or an issue. So having people that talk to other people all the time, you don't have to call that management. You can call that coaching. But checking in with stuff is how the organization continues to learn and thrive. So I think to answer your question, there's always things you can start delegating immediately, right? If you're not good at accounting, delegate the accounting out, but still learn it, right? So what I always tell the companies that I'm working with is, what's the first thing that you're willing to let go that somebody else can do? Go ahead and get that out the door. And then what's the last thing that you're going to hold on to because you're just not going to let it go, right? For me, it was money. I didn't want to let the money go until the end. So I held on to that the longest, and I had to figure out how to make that happen. It was a mental game for me. It wasn't that there wasn't better people out there that could handle money. It was mentally, am I going to give this to somebody or not? So, yeah.
What stage for you building your company do your employees start to feel, I would say, more job security? Because I know if you came to me and I was your first employee, that would be a hard sell.
Yeah. That's a really good question, really tough question. I think you have different types of employees at different stages of your companies. So I've got a couple people that have been with me from the early years. One person I've been working with for 15 years, another person I've been working with for 10. But I've got a bunch of people that when we were at 5, 6, 7, and 8, they're no longer with me. Do I talk to them all the time? Yeah, they went on to do other stuff. But they were the right people at the right time. And they believed in what we were doing. They wanted to be in that small, scrappy, scenario. And I still needed to show them that we had customers and that we were revenue. And I think that's a leadership thing, showing that you have the ability to make the right decisions. But you're going to have different customers or different employees at different stages, and that's okay. One of the things that we just learned, we got. Arizona Business Journal sends out surveys to companies to have the best employee awards, right, or the best company awards to work for. We got that award when we were at about 12 people because they have them in different categories: small, medium, large companies. And then we haven't got the award since, and we just were notified just the other day that we're getting the award for one of the best places to work again at our next size. So it took us a little time to go through that transition of the people that worked really good and enjoyed it at the smaller level to now at the bigger level being able to enjoy it. So I think it's a continued transition for you. And sometimes some of those employees will have to go.
One more question is probably
Yeah.
just as hard. So in building the stage of your company, like, for example, for me, if I were to start building a company right now, I work at another employer, so it'd be hard to find the time. But where do you let go of all other employment, and where do you know that I have enough to make it, and now I can focus on growing my company?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of those are personal decisions, right? How comfortable are you? Like, how much time do you think you're going to need? I think a couple of things to think about is, one, it's important to validate the idea of the business, right? Can you get far enough while you're still working on something else to get 1 or 2 customers or to get some proof, right? And then you need to understand what kind of revenue that can generate and how quickly it can generate that revenue. And whatever you think it is, it's going to be 3 times longer. right? It's going to be 3 times more, it's going to take you 3 times longer than you think, and the revenue will be 3 times slower than you think. I'm not saying you can't hit it out of the ballpark right away, but I've worked with so many entrepreneurs, I have so many entrepreneur friends, everybody takes longer than they think. So I think the personal decision is validating the business, knowing how much money you have, or, a partnership with somebody, right? There's a bunch of ways to do it, but you've got to be comfortable, and you've got to have a long enough lead time that you think that the business can get off the ground, that you're not going to be like, and just all of a sudden bail on it, because you got to give it time. You got to water it. It's like a plant. You got to make sure the soil's good and put the water on it and look at it every day, and you got to give it the attention. So, yeah. Yeah.
What are some ways that you test or validate an idea? I know USAA, what they do is before they send out a product, they'll have basically a small lab and send it out to only a certain number of people. The thing is, if you send the whole system, people might not like it, people leave the minute they get it. But they were saying that for 1% loss, it's not much of a loss, and they could actually test, the product that they want out there. So kind of like a beta test. What are some ways that you would do it, or maybe go out there and just validate a concept?
Just so I make sure I'm answering correctly, you want to know what are some of the ideas that we've used to validate a concept?
Something like that, or other ways to test it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of different ways to test concepts. I think it's important to understand what type of concept you're trying to test, right? If you're trying to test something simple like a marketing message, you can A/B test something like that, right? You can set up, a campaign and say, all right, I'm going to try and reach these customers with this message and these customers with this message, and you see which ones work, right? The simplest test is something like that. If it's getting more complicated and you're actually trying to prove out like an actual design of a product or something, there's a couple different ways to go about it. In the digital space, you can wireframe or prototype, right? You can put together some wireframe concepts, which is just the visual representations of the screens. Maybe they can click through on something like that. If you're building a product to manufacture, you usually can prototype the product. You can, especially today with 3D printing and things like that, you can go and get something like that printed and get a look at it and feel it and see what it would take before, and get in the hands of some people before you go and create a mold and put all the cost of having actually produced that product. So it really depends. Are you testing messages? Are you testing visual cues? Are you testing actual functional products? And there's a bunch of different ways to go about testing that. But I recommend testing highly and understand what you're trying to test, right? What's the feedback you want before you go into the test.
When you first started, what were some ways that you tried to look for some sort of revenue, whether it was investors or crowdfunding or whatever that might be?
Yeah, so when I first started, I didn't have any ways to get any revenue or funding any other way than to just go sell. There just wasn't an option. I'm sure I could have found other ways. Typically service-based businesses are not something that a venture capital or a private equity group or somebody's going to fund. Service businesses are usually bootstraps. Go find your customers and go from there. So what I did when I left my company, it was during the dot-com crash. I actually saw the crash happening. I was on the sales team, and I didn't see enough sales coming in the door, and I knew how much money that we had raised, and I knew that it was going to run out. So I started going out and talking to people and getting customers that I knew would need help, and I lined up 2 or 3 customers on some short-term contracts. I basically came up with a kind of like a 2-month gig contract for a couple customers, and they became long-term customers. I started working with them for a couple years after that. So Today, I think there's a lot more options to go find funding. Like I said, you can look at stuff like Kickstarter. If you're actually, there's all kinds of startup things. I'm sure you guys have some stuff here at ASU where you can, win a contest and get, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. I mean, I just did a contest last year that had prize money for 30 or 50,000 or something like that. I think you guys have a lot more opportunities these days. Yeah.
So there's one other thing that it seems like everybody nowadays, a high percentage of the students dive into the option of creating an app or an app for your company, and just because it seems like that's the most valid thing for some reason, but I think a lot of the times it seems easier than it is, and and apps have just as much effort and work to go into it and create it. It seems like. So I guess from your understanding of those main key points to keep in mind, or
main points to keep in mind if you're creating an app, or what I think about how hard it is to create an app.
I think just how hard it is, because I think the most important thing with entrepreneurship is recognizing how much it takes, because you have to make that commitment to.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. I think before you build anything, are you solving somebody's problem? Right? I mean, if you build an app and you don't solve a problem, why would I use it? What's the value that I get from using an app? It's cool. I don't know. You're not going to make any
Validate it first.
Yeah, you're not going to make any money off something that's cool. You might. I mean, there are still those 0.01% things that just went viral, and you're like, whoa. But those are crash and burn type scenarios. So where's the value? And then creating an app is hard, right? You got to either work with somebody that knows how to program that. You've got to come up with the concept. You've got to come up with the design. You've got to program it. You've got to launch it. You've got to market it. There's hundreds of thousands of apps in the App Store. You can't just you can't just put it up on the App Store. And you got to actually market it. You got to go out there and get people to use it. You've got to find distribution channels so people will download your app. And that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it's no different than any other business. You got to build a product. You got to find a distribution channel. You got to find customers and get feedback.
Yeah, nothing's easy. Right?
No, I mean it's all. I mean they're all the same. You go about it differently, right? If you're building a program or you're building an app, you're gonna program. If you're manufacturing something, you got to go find somebody to manufacture it. But are you solving a problem? Is it adding value to somebody? And is somebody willing to pay you for it? Yeah.
You mentioned earlier for your the new company you're working on, it's software as a service.
Uh-huh.
What were some of the decisions that led you to break into the software as a service as a platform?
Yeah. So I've been in the services business with Media, and that's a very up and down business because you're looking for new websites, or you're looking for people that want help with their websites consistently. So we wanted to try and find another type of revenue model that was a little bit more flat in growth, and that's something that could scale a lot quicker. So that's why we looked at the recurring revenue model. We also ran into a scenario where we were trying to do a service offering at Media. So our customers wanted to know, I'm sure you guys are familiar with like Google Analytics and things like that, which are all the analytics around how your website's doing. Our customers were asking us to analyze all this stuff and say, oh, we want you to do reports on this, and we want you to tell us how our website's doing. And so we said, okay, well, if we hire somebody, it's going to cost us this much to hire somebody, so we can do that for X amount. And the customers were like, whoa, I don't want to pay X amount to do that. That's too much, but I want this. And we heard that over and over and over again, and we're like, well, there's a skills mismatch here, right? I mean, it costs us X amount to go hire somebody, and the customer only wants to pay X amount, but they're willing to pay something. So we had to figure out, how do we get the cost down to what they're willing to pay, and how do we scale that? And the best way to do that was to automate a lot of the things that people wanted on a monthly basis, and create reports around that. And so that led us to that software model, because we couldn't find, our business model wasn't aligning. We couldn't get a service offering out that we could make money on and that the customer wanted to pay for. So we had to find another method of distribution that made sense. Yeah. Got a couple more minutes. Any last questions?
So what did you think about that, the Phoenix Startup Week, and how that works out? Are you pretty well tied into that whole network?
Yeah, we're tied in. So we're really supportive of the startup community and just the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and we're part of a bunch of different stuff. We do a lot of meetups at Melt Media. Like, we've got meetups weekly for different things. I'm super excited about the entrepreneur community in Phoenix right now. 10 years ago, there was no resources for entrepreneurs. There was no mentors for entrepreneurs. And now I think with the things like the Phoenix Startup Week and all the other stuff that's out there, including stuff like what you guys are doing, I think it's awesome. You guys have so much opportunity to learn. There's so many programs out there, and I'm part of a few different programs that I really enjoy. But I'm excited to see what's happening. And even there's stuff, I've been doing this for a long time on my own, and I'm still finding now resources that I can use. For our other startup, we joined a startup contest, which you pitch to investors. I've never pitched to investors before. I've never had to, because we've had to make our company work from scratch since day one. I had never pitched to investors. It was like super intimidating. And then these guys came out and beat me up. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And I'm like, it's my idea, why are you beating me up? But that was it. I had to learn that, okay, these guys I want to ever get money invested from somebody, I need to learn how to take not take the hits. I need to deflect the hits and go back and get the right answers. But I had that opportunity because of some of the things I'm seeing. So real excited about what's going on in Phoenix. Certainly not the same as some other metro areas, but I think we've got a lot there. If you're willing to use it, it's there.
Yeah, it seems like there's a good solid integrity level amongst the crowd that's building anyway.
Yeah, and the people, I have a lot of connections with some other software and SaaS CEOs in town, and they're all giving their time. They're all doing stuff like this. They're all willing to talk to people, right? And that's what's important, right? Is that all of us are willing to help people.
Yeah.
So that's great. Any last questions?
What did you do before you started your first Melt Media?
Yeah, so right out of ASU, I worked for Accenture, which is if you guys aren't familiar with it, it's a large IT kind of consulting company. And so I was implementing like large IT systems, which is where I learned some of my tech and programming background. And then from there, I joined another startup that did e-commerce software. And from there, I joined another startup that did software as well. And then I went out on my own.
So you always would say you probably had that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, I did. I didn't know I had it. I got into Accenture. Is a big company. There's 40,000 plus employees. I don't know how many they have now, but I just rejected it like immediately. I was like, whoa, I don't like this place. And but I stayed there for 2 years because I had a lot to learn, and I learned so much. And then I'm like, all right, I want to do something in more startup space. So then I joined a startup, and I learned a ton there. Like, I was able to run with things because everybody, if you join a company that's growing quickly, and there's tons of opportunity because you just take something and run with it, nobody's going to stop you. And if they do, you're in the wrong place. So I got to try a bunch of stuff, but I was still playing by somebody else's rules, and that didn't feel right for me. Great. Well, thanks everybody.